Alan Chapelot was bludgeoned to death in his home in 2006. The man convicted of his killing, a Chinese dissident who was somehow connected to the secret intelligence service MI6. The case has always been shrouded in mystery as the first murder trial in modern times to be held partly in secret. The Court of Appeal is due to decide whether the guilty verdict should be overturned.
I'm almost insane, and now I'm insane.
We've spoken exclusively to the man behind bars who's always claimed he suffered a miscarriage of justice.
I didn't do it.
I'm Thomas Harding. I grew up here on Downshire Hill in Hampstead, North London. I knew the victim, Alan Chapelot, as the eccentric who lived 4 doors up the road from me. After he was killed, the house was knocked down and redeveloped. It's recently been on the market for over £14 million. I've spent the past year writing a book about this story. I want to get to the bottom of what happened to my neighbour. An author and a photographer who wrote about George Bernard Shaw, Alan wasn't close to many people. Peter Tausig lived 2 doors down the street from him.
Where's the other room? Alan Chapelot was part of Downshire Hill. He was one of the original characters, and one could always see him wandering up and down the street in his grubby raincoat with his belt tied round his waist, or on his old motorbike which he kept in the garden. But he was so incredibly proud of this ramshackle house. We used to see him up on the roof repairing leaks with sellotape. I felt terribly sad when I heard about his death.
Police found 86-year-old Alan Chapelot's body buried under half a ton of his own book manuscripts after being strangled and beaten to death. Over the past year, I've had a number of conversations with Peter Lansdowne, the Murder Inquiry's senior investigating officer. He is portrayed in our film by an actor.
It was a real whodunit. It took 2 days of searching his house. We saw his foot.
Lansdowne believes Alan Chapelot had been the victim of fraud, which led to a burglary gone wrong. You have seen a lot of murders. Have you ever seen any bungled burglary with such a high level of violence?
Not that I can recall, no.
Does that raise questions in your head? Do you think, oh, maybe?
Very few. I'm still supremely confident we have got the right man.
So that's him with his... I find it hard to believe that those brutal pictures of Alan were the result of a robbery that had gone wrong. Kerry Nixon is an expert in criminal behaviour.
This is an excessive use of violence if it was a bungled burglary. The burglar would likely use some violence to incapacitate the person, and they would get out as quickly as they could. What they've done here, they've used an excessive use of violence, and they've then taken a long time to bury the body amongst all the manuscripts and rubbish that we can see here. That's not what a burglar does.
Just days before he was killed, Alan called the Inland Revenue, worried he'd been a victim of mail fraud. This is the audio recording of that call.
Good morning. Can you take your full name for me, please?
Yes, it's Mr. Chapelot. I've been away abroad, and I came back and found that somebody has broken into my front porch and stolen, amongst other things, letters. I'd like you to put a stop on that check and issue a duplicate.
Within days of finding the body, the police had identified their prime suspect, Wang Yam, a 45-year-old Chinese dissident who lived here on Denning Road, less than 5 minutes' walk from Alan Chapelot's home. But when they arrived at his flat to arrest him, they soon discovered that their suspect had fled to Switzerland. The police went through Wang Yam's rubbish and discovered that he had been involved with various suspicious financial dealings. Soon after, they obtained CCTV images of him using Alan's cheques and bank cards. But they found no forensic evidence tying Wang Yam to the crime scene. The police also had audio recordings of a Chinese-sounding man calling banks and pretending to be Alan Chapelot. This is one of them.
Thank you for calling. How can I help you?
I lost the card.
Right, it's not accepting that account number. Can you confirm your name and address, please?
Alan Chaplow, 9 Downhill, Hampton, NW31NR.
How, as a police officer, then, do you go to the murder? It seems so circumstantial to me.
All of the transactions on the victim's account were linked to Wang Yam, or an Oriental male with similarities to Wang Yam. Everything, so circumstantially everything adds up. Could it be anyone else? And the answer has to be very, very unlikely.
There is no evidence that he'd ever been in the house.
No.
No evidence he'd ever touched Chaplow.
No. No forensic evidence.
No evidence, full stop. No witnesses, nothing. Isn't that circumstantial evidence?
But no evidence that anyone else had either. Could there be another viable alternative? We didn't find one.
Wang Yam is currently serving a 20-year sentence and is being held in Loudon Grange prison. He continues to maintain that he is innocent. I'm the first journalist to interview Wang Yam. Over the past year, I've spent 25 hours speaking with him by telephone in his prison cell. Hello.
Oh, hello, it's Wang Yam.
Good evening, Wang Yam. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
In 2006, you go to Switzerland, and tell me about when the day that they came to arrest you.
We are cooking, and then they just woke up from the stair. I think they opened the door. Say, well, please, we needed to talk to you. I say, all right. What about? They say, we can't tell you. And now they handcuffed me. And they please tell me I've been looking for murder. I'm shocked.
Following his arrest in Switzerland, Wang Yam was extradited back to Britain. Kirsty Brimelow QC has represented him from the beginning. So Kirsty, why do you think your client was innocent?
There was no evidence at all forensically that he had committed this crime. There was no traces of blood found upon clothing, and there were no witnesses seeing him. There was nothing in his flat. He had no history of violence, and to beat someone to death where you have not a violent bone in your body is unusual in the extreme and is highly unlikely to occur.
I've been given exclusive access to correspondence written by Wang Yam's solicitors to the CPS before the murder trial. It is clear from this that his lawyers felt that crucial information was not being disclosed, in particular, Wang Yam's relationship with MI6. His lawyers also attached this letter from the Ministry of Defence, which invited Wang Yam in for an interview and thanked him in advance for his cooperation. Because of a 2008 court order, we're not allowed to know any more about Wang Yam's work for MI6 or how it relates to his defence. I questioned Wang Yam about whether he'd asked the police to get in touch with MI6 after being arrested.
I say, would you please contact with MI6? I give you the telephone number. They will tell you what is my job. He say back to me, say, I'm not to talk to them.
You told them already, off the record, that you were with MI6?
Yes. In 2012, I phoned MI6. I say I want to talk with my manager. They say, oh, we can't help you, and you need to talk with your solicitor.
What I can tell you, and this was in open court, was that he was trying to get alongside pretty serious criminals in order to gather information as to their illegal activity, to take that information and report to the appropriate authorities.
And by authorities, you mean MI6?
I can't go any further. His defence, as given in open court, was that he was gathering information of illegal activity and was taking that information to report back to appropriate authorities. I can't tell you any more as to who those authorities were, as to why he was in that position in the first place, because all of that was in camera, in secret.
A few weeks after I started speaking to Wang Yam, I received a letter from the Attorney General's office, letting me know that they were aware of my research and reminding me of the court's press restrictions. It stated, "Breach of this order is a contempt of court."
Somebody murdered Alan Chapelleau. There was no other option. That is what you have to rely on at the end of the day. There wasn't an alternative. And almost without exception, I think it is without exception, if it looks like a murderer and smells like a murderer, it probably is the murderer.
If there were other people prowling around the streets looking at mail and posts besides the suspect Wang Yam, would that begin to undermine the no alternative concept?
It could do.
It begins to nibble away, doesn't it?
Yeah, it has to, yes. But there was no intelligence information. There was nothing like that. Have there been other attempts to defraud in this manner? There was nothing like that.
So you think you got your guy?
Yeah, I'm absolutely confident. Absolutely confident.
What else do we know about this case? There's very limited information in the public domain, but one of the few sources is a Supreme Court judgment, and it states that Wang Yam claimed he'd been given Alan's cheques and credit cards by gangsters, and that he was playing along with them as a means of assembling evidence against them and reporting them. But because of court restrictions, there's little more we can learn about his defence. And extraordinarily, we can't even speculate about why parts of the trial were heard in secret. Freelance crime reporter Duncan Campbell has been following this story for years. He believes the issue at the heart of this case is whether the interests of the British intelligence services were prioritised over Wang Yam's right to a fair trial.
The official reason for holding the trial in secret was for national security. The real reason, I think, was to avoid embarrassment. MI6 were embarrassed that they had been working with somebody who was a little bit rackety and, as far as they were concerned, could possibly have been involved in crime and even in murder.
Years after Wang Yam was found guilty, a new witness came forward.
We wrote an article in The Guardian in early 2014, and a couple of days after it appeared, I got this email. "Dear Duncan, I read your article today with interest. I lived a few doors down from this back in 2006. The following Feb, this is after Wang Yam is already arrested. I opened the door to find a man with a knife going through our post. What I'm amazed by is the fact that the local police did not immediately pass this on to people involved in the Chapelleau case. And I think it's shocking that Wang Yam's defence were unaware of this, and shocking that nothing was done about it at the time."
Do you think that Wang Yam should have been found guilty of the murder of Alan Chapelleau?
No, he should have been acquitted. I'm sure if a jury had known that while he was in prison, somebody was carrying out a very, very similar kind of crime, that the jury would have acquitted. He did not have a fair trial.
This new witness's testimony was sent to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, who took it under review. I asked former Senior Investigating Officer Peter Lansdowne what he thought about it. Have you heard what happened today at the Criminal Cases Review Commission?
No, I've been away. I've just come back. On this case?
Yes, they have referred it to the appeals court.
Oh my God. No, I didn't know that at all. On what basis?
This is a quote. It says, "The referral is based on new evidence relating to the failure by police to reveal to the Crown Prosecution Service and consequently to deprive Mr. Yam's defence of material which might have assisted the defence and/or undermined the prosecution case."
I don't even know what they are talking about.
Sometimes you have problems remembering things, correct?
Yes.
And so this is my question is it just possible when it's late at night and you're lying on your bed in prison, do you ever ask yourself, maybe I did it, maybe I just don't remember?
No, never. Never. I never lost my memory. I never lost my conscience in that degree. I always insane. I know I'm insane. I didn't do it. and never access that house.
I believe there are strong indications that Wang Yam suffered a miscarriage of justice. There were no forensics linking him to the scene of the crime. The secret trial may have meant that witnesses didn't come forward, and any failure to disclose potential evidence could seriously undermine the prosecution's case. If the Court of Appeal does overturn Wang Yam's guilty verdict, the question then is, who killed Alan Chapelleau?